Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Cassie. I am an assistant director in career planning and development.
My name's Carrie Lee. I'm the interim director.
And today we're going to be going through some expectations that you can have when trying to network in the US. And so kind of an overview is that, networking is a way to connect and interact with new individuals to form professional relationships and alliances. So it's really helpful when you're trying to expand your own professional development opportunities and goals and expand on the opportunities and goals of others. It helps you build new relationships, and these can result in sharing of resources or helping you accomplish a goal. There are a variety of different types of networking. So sometimes you can network virtually via professional social media websites like LinkedIn or Handshake. You can connect with other students or employers on those. You can join professional associations either on or off campus. Um, and you can attend events in person, either on or off campus or virtual events too. There is what's known as warm networking, where someone that um, you know, introduces you to someone else. So you're making use of that network already, and helps you form a connection between, an applicant and a potential employer. There's also cold networking, where you contact someone that you don't know and you don't have a mutual connection with, or an established like pre-existing relationship with. And while cold networking might seem intimidating, in a 2020 study, it found that students who engaged in networking were actually twice as likely to earn an internship from connecting with those others than students who engaged in warm networking. So the cold networking is actually sometimes more impressive to those employers if it's done well, if it's done right, if it's done professionally. So we'll talk through what that looks like. Networking can lead to what's known as an informational interview. So once you connect with someone, that is typically the next step. It's this, a little bit longer of a conversation and a technique where you gather a certain amount of information or insights or advice from that person that you're talking to learn about maybe their career path, the job that they're working in, learn more about the specific industry that they've been working in throughout. And sometimes, typically, it's used to gain advice for somebody who wants to go into that profession. So, typical informational interviews start with, yeah, I'm really looking to work for this company. I'd love to learn more about what your experience has been like here. What are the opportunities for growth? What has your experience with other people in the industry been like? Those types of things.
LinkedIn is a really great way to network. It's often one of the easiest ways to sort of start building your network, get to know other folks. So one thing I would recommend is before you connect with other people, you want to make sure that you have a strong profile. So we've linked to some of our other resources and guides. So we will send you this presentation in the next couple of days. So you can look at all these links and other resources if you want to. But in terms of your profile, you want to make sure that it's clear if somebody looks at your profile of what are you looking for and what are your key experiences and skills. So for instance, if you've had, jobs or you've had volunteer experiences or involvement, that's clear to someone else, or if you're looking for internships or something. So you want to make sure that's kind of the first thing before you start connecting and people are like looking at an empty profile. If they don't already know you, they're going to be less likely to accept you if you don't have that kind of fill that profile. It's a really good way to, start off, I would say, is existing contacts you have. So, if you haven't used LinkedIn very much before, start with requesting people you already know. So maybe, your peers, your classmates, family, friends, folks like that. They don't necessarily have to be in the same career field as you because, somebody might work at a company you're interested in down the road, even if they work in IT and you work in communications, doesn't mean that there can't be useful networking that comes from that. And then once you kind of have a few contacts, then I would start seeking out new people that you might not already know well. The LinkedIn alumni tool is a really great way to filter. So on LinkedIn, if someone has Webster University listed in their education section, you can scroll through those. So you can use certain filters to say, I want to see what English majors who graduated from Webster, what are they up to? Where do they live in the world? What types of companies do they work at? Things like that. So it's a really easy way to kind of filter and find. You can also engage with employers. So most companies and organizations are going to have a LinkedIn page. So for instance, you can follow Webster University, or you can follow Boeing, Worldwide Technology to get updates about their organization. And then if you have questions, you can interact with posts that they're making. You can also join groups. So sometimes there might be, a group for communication professionals or professional association events. I would consider going through all of your privacy settings and making at least a good chunk of your profile public. Because same thing, if you're looking to connect with other people, it's helpful if they can see a little bit about you besides just, your name or your name and your photo. So it's up to you, but usually it is a little bit more helpful if they can see a little bit more of your experiences, what you might be looking for. As with anything else, just make sure you're proofreading, you're using formal communication, not sort of text slang, but more how you would write an email to a professor or employer. And when you connect with folks on LinkedIn, if you go to their page and click to connect, you can choose to personalize it. So I would always strongly encourage you to do this, especially if you don't know them. So if you are including that personal message, you want to say, who are you? So my name's Carrie. I'm a senior psychology major at Webster University. I'm contacting you because I see you're also a Webster alumni. I'm really looking to learn more about what it's like to work in the counseling field. Would you have some time to connect with me, right? So you're giving me all those key points of how did you find them? Why are you interested in talking to them? What your request is of them. So it doesn't need to be very long. There is a character limit there, but you're kind of giving them the key points for them to say, why is this person reaching out to me? Because if you just generically connect with someone you don't know, they're not necessarily gonna accept that request if there's not a reason for that.
You can also network on Handshake. So similar to LinkedIn, you can search by specific employers in the employer section of Handshake. When you click on the employer name, you can learn more about that specific company. They sometimes will have contact information for HR managers or recruiters that you can message or reach out to, as well as some more publicly listed staff. And so you can either reach out to them on Handshake or try and connect with them on LinkedIn as well. You can check out their website directly from Handshake to see if they have positions posted specifically on the company website that maybe aren't necessarily all posted in Handshake. So that's a great way to look for further opportunities once you find a company that you're interested in. And then a newer feature in Handshake that is also similar to LinkedIn is there's a people section of Handshake to search through other students who are on Handshake, either at Webster or beyond and at other universities. You can filter by Webster or alumni specifically, or use search filters to find people who may be studying the same topics as you at nearby universities or across the country. If a certain student has have their profile public and you can see that they studied something similar to you and interned at a company you're interested in, you can also reach out to them and message them the same way you would on LinkedIn. Ask for those informational interviews, tell them why you're reaching out, and we would recommend the same kinds of messaging guidance, for professional communication on Handshake as you would use on LinkedIn as well.
So professional associations, some of you might have already heard of these or gotten connected with them. So they're just organizations that are usually centered around a particular industry or a particular profession. So, for instance, SHRM is a Society for Human Resources Management. So it's all folks who work in HR that are part of that organization. Or the American Marketing Association is all marketing folks. So, they get together, have best practices. They may have networking events, conferences, certifications. They might have kind of research, news articles that they post, things like that. So for any particular association, they may have a national group like the American Marketing Association, but they will often have more local or regional. So they might have a St. Louis chapter or a Midwest chapter or something like that. There are some that have university kind of based student chapters. So, that's something where you can check out Involved, see what student organizations exist, or if you're really interested in setting up a group, because that's an option and we don't have that already here. You can get together with some friends, put in a request to, create a chapter if that's something that you want to do down the road. So you can find some kind of examples of professional associations that exist, ways to potentially connect with alumni and things. But that's just another really good way to get involved. So same thing, sometimes they might have events or resources that are publicly available or free for students. Sometimes those associations have fees. So, I would say that's up to you before you join anything. Might be a good idea to talk to a faculty to say, hey, is this a group that you're familiar with? Does it seem like they're active in the area? Does it seem like maybe this would be a worthwhile investment if there is a fee or something or not?
And then another way to network is at an event, whether it's in person or virtual. You can choose to either join the crowd and have a larger conversation or talk to someone one-on-one. Our best tips are to, start with introducing yourself with a few relevant details. Typically, what you're studying and where you go to school is useful. It's helpful to listen to their name and then repeat it back to them to remember. So it's nice to meet you, Carrie. My name is Cassie. Be interested in that other person. Don't spend the whole time talking about yourself. Ask them open-ended questions. Tell me what it's like at your current internship, or what kinds of opportunities does your company have. Be polite and show interest in what their company might be working on or learning more about, that industry specifically. Remember to speak slowly and confidently. Practice that active listening so that you're paying attention to what they're saying and not just trying to think up of the next thing you're going to reply with or the next question you're going to ask them. Generally pay attention to what they're saying and, ask clarifying questions. Ask them to expand on things that they're talking about so that they know that you're really engaged. Same thing, show enthusiasm on what you're learning about. Show them that, hey, that's really interesting. I'd love to learn more. And when they ask you about maybe your skills or experiences, it's really helpful for you to give them specific relevant examples. So if they say, have you ever worked in a customer service setting? You say, yeah, I work at the university center where I answer questions at the help desk, and we support probably 15 different questions per work shift or something like that. It's a great way to kind of summarize the type of skills that you're using. Be sure to exchange contact information, whether you take each other's email addresses or add each other on LinkedIn, or they take your resume or they give you a business card. And then be sure to follow up with them after to thank them for their time, or, right as you're exiting, say, thank you so much. It was great getting to know you. That's a great way to kind of transfer to chatting with someone else, and then follow up after to reach out and say, thanks so much. It was nice to meet you. If you want to connect further, I'd love to chat about this and this.
How do we ask contact info without making uncomfortableness?
That's a good
Sometimes people.
question.
Yeah, okay.
I was going to say, you can typically say, what's the best way I can reach out to you? And then they may share their most comfortable way of connecting. So if they prefer email over LinkedIn, I would kind of leave it in their court to say, what's the best way I can reach out to you? Or would you be open to chatting again? How can I reach you? And then leave it up to them on how they would prefer to connect with you. You can also just offer your contact information and then let them come to you.
So moving on a little bit, definitely, if you're attending any type of networking event, you want to kind of practice your professional introduction about yourself. This is sometimes called an elevator pitch. So where that name comes from is, for instance, if you're working at a big company, you're in the elevator with someone and you see someone who maybe you don't already know well, but they're higher up at the company, sort of the 30 seconds it would take you to go up several floors on the elevator, that's the time you might have to say hello, introduce yourself. So that's why sometimes you might hear that as a term. So all it is just a very brief introduction. So definitely you want to keep it under a minute, but just kind of hitting on the key points about yourself and your experiences. So what you want to think about is, who are you? What do you do currently, or what have you done in the past? And then where are you going? So for instance, introducing yourself with your name, what are you studying? When are you graduating? And then what are you up to right now? So that might be you're part of a student organization, you have an on-campus job, you have an internship, you do some volunteer work, whatever that might be that seems relevant, but just kind of a statement or two about that type of work you've done or things you've been up to in the past, and then kind of what you're looking for. So in our example here, I'm looking for summer 2025 internship opportunities. So that kind of gives people a clue into the conversation if they say, oh, great, I work in a similar area, or, oh, that's, something that my company has a lot of, IT consulting services, things like that. So that just kind of gives them a prelude. You can also ask a question. So if you kind of introduce yourself and say, oh, I'm really excited to attend, this AMA conference. This is my first time attending one. What's been your experiences with AMA? So then you're kind of leading into the other person responding to you. So that's another way that you can kind of finish that. But same thing, it just kind of helps you get off to a good start, hitting all those basic points.
What if a student doesn't have any experience, ma'am? What if a student doesn't have any experience? That can you introduce himself as a student from Webster University, and I'm looking forward to.
Yes, exactly. That's the perfect way. I'm a student, I'm a Webster, I'm studying this. This is when I'm expected to graduate. I'm interested in these future types of opportunities. You can also talk about different experiences you might have had as a student. So, any work on campus or any clubs or organizations you're a part of, any big projects you might have been working on. If they ask more personal details about some of your roles and experiences, those are some things that you can kind of bring in and talk about.
Yeah, and you can also mention classes. So if you're saying, oh, I'm taking a lot of finance courses this semester, so I'm excited to learn more about that area of the business world. So just something, doesn't have to be very long or very.
No need to say weaknesses or strengths, I guess. Like,
No.
No.
Definitely not weaknesses at all. You don't want to bring that up unless someone's explicitly asking you. And yes, for strengths, that's certainly something you could work in if you wanted to. So if you want to say, oh, my expertise is kind of focused on X, Y, and Z. Can you tell me more about what you do? Then you can kind of start that conversation.
And as far as topics to cover and not cover, we'll talk about the types of questions to ask first. So you definitely want to be asking what the employer's experiences have been like. What do you enjoy most working about? What do you enjoy most about working at this company? What has been your career path so far in this organization or in general? What's been instrumental to your success at this company? And then, what are some typical career paths for this position? So if there are any specific jobs or internship postings that they have that you've researched beforehand, you can ask, where does this position lead? Where do people end up? I saw in this specific posting that this job involves this specific project. Can you tell me more about that? I'm interested in summer 2025 internship opportunities. When does your company typically post those to apply? Those are kinds of great ones to check out around specific postings. Or about the organization as a whole, you can ask what qualities would help someone be successful at your company? How would you describe the culture at your company? I saw that the company is working on this new, really interesting initiative. Do you know more about that? How does your organization promote diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts? Like kind of getting a sense of the values of what that company is about and what they're kind of focused on. Those are the types of things you can be asking or bringing up and that you should be bringing up.
So, in terms of things that you want to avoid bringing up at, networking event, career fair, things like that, you want to avoid just kind of starting a conversation and saying, hey, will you help me get a job? Or I'm looking for this type of opportunity. Will you refer me? Because if you just met someone in a couple of minutes, most people are not going to feel comfortable referring you in a way like that because they don't really know anything about you. And that's something where, there are sometimes larger companies that do have kind of a formal referral process for jobs, but that's also impacts their professional, reputation. So if they refer someone and then they say, yeah, this person you said you knew didn't show up to their interview, they showed up really late, that's something where they are going to maybe question sort of your judgment or if you know them very well. So that's why it's not that people don't want to be helpful, but you don't really want to start off a conversation that way. So those networking events are kind of a good way to start a relationship because that's really what networking is having professional relationships with folks in your industry and in your career field. So networking is a two-way street. So, you want to hopefully be helpful to other people and they want to be helpful to you, but it's kind of finding that balance because, you might think if you're a student, you don't have as much experience. Sometimes it feels a little bit awkward where maybe you don't have as much to offer, but when we talk to alumni and employers, sometimes they do, they generally want to hear about their experience. Like I graduated from Webster 20 years ago, tell me what your experience has been like there. Did you have this professor? Like those are things that they enjoy learning about and talking about. So don't feel like you don't have anything to offer just because you haven't been working in the field for 20 years. So after you kind of get to know people, you've had conversations with them, people are going to feel more comfortable, having that kind of back and forth. So, if you want to do something like, hey, you had a good conversation with an event, maybe you connect with them on LinkedIn, You reach out to them down the road to set up an informational interview to learn more about their kind of career progression, how did they get into, the IT world, because they also switched career fields or something like that. Things along those lines. If you're an international student, I would always kind of avoid starting off with that. So not that that's something to be ashamed of or anything like that, but a lot of employers don't always understand the guidelines around hiring international talent. Or if they hear the word sponsorship, they're gonna kind of jump to, oh, that's expensive and complicated. So if you go up to somebody and say, hey, do you sponsor visas? Do you hire international students? They may just sort of shut that down and be like, oh, I don't know anything about that, or no, we don't sponsor, that's the whole thing. So you're kind of shutting down the conversation before it starts. So what I would say is it's better to kind of just go through that professional introduction, learn a little bit more before you start talking about those other pieces. Because for an employer, hiring an international student for CPT and OPT experience is not that complicated. They don't have to pay anything extra. So you don't really want to conflate that process with sponsorship, for something like an H-1B or a longer term visa, because they're very, very different processes. And what a lot of employers say when we talk to them and we ask them, are you open to hiring international students or not? It depends. If it's the right student, we will consider them. So you want to make a good impression and for them to say, oh, they have a lot of great experience with this. They were really interested. They were asking me a lot of questions. So that's what you want to kind of leave. Doesn't mean you can't have that conversation down the road, but just not the first interaction. You also want to sort of avoid bringing up sensitive topics. So things like politics, religion, financial, you don't want to say, well, what do you make as a financial analyst? Because same thing, people get uncomfortable talking about money a lot in sort of US culture. It's one thing to say, oh, like what's a typical, entry level financial analyst make? Because that's a broad question. You're not asking that personal person their salary because that's very uncomfortable. But same thing, like any of those topics, you don't know where people align. People tend to have a lot of very strong feelings. They get offended really easily. So same thing, just avoid that. Don't ask them their opinion about the presidential debate unless it's a politics related conference or something. Just better to avoid those topics. You also want to sort of avoid oversharing. So if you're giving too much information about yourself, that's not really your professional self, but more your personal self. So, you want to keep the focus more on things that you would talk about at work, like your education, your kind of career path, what you want to do. You don't want to give them details about like health issues that you're having or why you're running late to this thing, like stuff like that. So you just want to make sure that you're presenting yourself as a professional person who has kind of appropriate boundaries. So the other kind of piece with that too is that you want to avoid anything negative. So whether it's related to the person you're talking to or not, you don't really want to say, oh man, that main speaker was really, they were not very good. I didn't feel like that was a very useful presentation, or, complaining about the food or lack of opportunities interesting you, whatever it is. It just makes people feel uncomfortable. And a lot of times people aren't going to remember every specific thing you say. They're going to remember the overall impression. So if you're like, man, Cassie was like complaining about everything, I'm going to have kind of a negative impression of her. Doesn't mean she's a bad person, but you want to make sure you're focusing on positives. Or, same thing if you're talking to somebody and they say, oh, my company doesn't really do that. We don't really have opportunities in that area. Just thank them, be polite. You don't need to express your frustration to them or like, well, nobody has opportunities for this area, or everyone keeps saying that to me. It's the same thing. People don't really know how to react to that, and then they just kind of don't, or they just sort of remove themselves from the conversation. So those are things you want to avoid.
And some reminders, some of the big topics for those in-person strategies are, bring copies of your resume if it's a big event and you're going to want to connect with employers. Know that some employers will not accept a paper copy. Sometimes they'll prefer to take an email address or a different way to reach out to you, but it's always helpful to just have a couple copies of your resume on hand, or a business card of some sort for them to reach out to you. Dress for success. So you can learn about some professional attire guidelines from this thing we've linked here. And make sure that you're dressing to impress business casual or business professional, depending on the type of event. Put your best foot forward there. Make sure that the attire you chose fits well and is ready. Make sure your appearance is professional with neat grooming. We recommend avoiding strong colognes or perfumes. Typically a little bit is fine, but some people get really sensitive or allergic to certain fragrances, so you don't want to be overwhelming them with a very heavy cologne or perfume. And then also be mindful of some nonverbal cues and cultural factors. So, be aware of people's personal space. You don't want to be standing too close to someone. Or if someone is starting to look uncomfortable or feel like they're, crossing their arms or turning away from you, maybe you're standing a little bit too close to them. So just kind of be mindful, pay attention to how people are responding and react appropriately if you need to step back out of their space a little bit.
Yeah. And then as you attend events, you connect with people, definitely follow up. So, if you get someone's contact information and you say, oh, I'll connect with you on LinkedIn, do that. Sort of complete the cycle, as it were. So ideally, try to do that within a day or two. And that just sort of keeps you more in their focus. So if you talk to somebody on Monday, doesn't mean you couldn't reach out to them a month later, but they maybe aren't going to remember you as well as, oh yeah, I remember talking to this person yesterday. So, try to do that sooner rather than later. If you talked about something specific, so like you talked about an upcoming opportunity, kind of reinforce your interest in that, or let them know, oh, thanks so much for sharing about this internship. I sent in my application tonight. I'm really excited to be considered for that. So, you can adjust that as needed. I would say kind of that paragraph, doesn't need to be any longer than that, but just a couple of sentences. You always want to specify where you met that person, because especially if you're doing this through LinkedIn, it is very helpful if someone can look back at your chat. So if somebody messages me and I'm like, is this a student? Is this somebody I met at a networking event? I don't recognize their name or their picture immediately. And I see the last message of them saying, oh, it was so great to meet you at the RVC Mentor Network event. That's an instant, okay, this is how I know this person. So it's really helpful to have that for future. So if you kind of specify where you met them, just get a little bit of detail. And then, like I mentioned, we have a lot of resources on our connections department page. We will send you the presentation in the next few days. So if you missed any of it, you want to go back, you can check that out later. And then otherwise, I will go ahead and open that up to questions. So if you have questions, feel free to type those in the chat, or you can unmute. So it looks like, should we bring our resumes to the career fair? Yes. So what I would say is, if you're looking at the list of employers on Handshake, so if you go to the career fair page, you could see everyone who signed up. So if you kind of get a sense of how many people you are interested in talking to, you can print that amount of copies plus 1 or 2 extra. So some people are not gonna take your resume. So what I mean by that is sometimes you might have a conversation with someone, they might look at your resume as you're talking to them and say, oh, okay, that's good to know, like you have some of these certifications, you have these experiences. That may be helpful in the moment, but they may not, they may give it back to you. So don't be weirded out if they do that, because sometimes it's just not really useful for them to have those paper copies, because if everyone has to apply online to be considered, they're not gonna necessarily do anything with your resume. It's more just helpful in the moment. Some people will take your resume, or they may say, hey, you know, we can kind of keep track of your information. I can ask, you know, the recruiter who recruits for a different area. You know, sometimes HR might send someone to the career fair that's focused on recruiting for technical roles or communication focused roles. So some of them may, but that's what I would say is it doesn't hurt to have those paper copies, but you don't necessarily need tons either. Any other questions that folks have?
Yeah, one thing I would like to know before going to career fair, is it possible to go through website or company name, things like it? Do you think it's a good idea to go through their information so that we can, while we are talking, we can share things? Yeah, I have read this
Mhm.
article on you and like something like that.
Yeah, so if you go to Handshake and you go to that like events tab, so if you just click on the Webster University 2024 Career Fair page, you can click employers and it will show you the full list. So you can go through, so for some of the employers, they have put in and said, oh, we have these roles posted on Handshake, we're specifically recruiting for these. Some of them haven't, or they'll just not really specify. So you're always welcome to talk to whoever you want. So even if it doesn't say that they're recruiting for your major, doesn't mean that they might not have openings down the road, even if they don't at this exact moment in time. So yes, I would say go through the list ahead of time. And then if you have people that you're more interested in, or you can do a little bit of research, so you can kind of ask some more in-depth questions of them, that's definitely a good way to stand out. And yeah, and what I would say is at least kind of know a little bit about what their company does. So for instance, if you know, okay, they're an advertising agency, or they're focused on like B2B sales for this area. You don't have to know everything about the company. You can talk to them and ask them questions, but you don't want to just walk up and say, what does your company do? Because you could have taken 30 seconds to look at that or Google that.
Last question, man. You said that oversharing can be sometime harmful. So I just want to ask, like, if we are not promising anything. However, we would like to say that we will add something valuable to your company. That if I work to you, then maybe I can bring something onto your table. So how
Mhm.
would we convey that message without making oversharing?
Yeah, for sure. So what I would say is, kind of talk about what skills or experiences you have. So, for instance, if you have a conversation with somebody and you're kind of wrapping up that conversation, you can say, oh, Stacy, thanks so much for the information. I really enjoyed learning more about XYZ company. I think my expertise in this area or my customer service skills would really help me be able to make a positive impact to your company. So I look forward to applying to those opportunities. So, you can just kind of say that. You can kind of state what your strengths are interested, or if they ask you a question too, they might say, oh, why are you interested in our company? Or, what types of experiences have you had before? So that sort of thing is fine. What I would say is when it comes off as too much is when it's like comes off more as braggy or arrogant. So usually the kind of line there is what I would say is when it's a comparison point. So if you say, oh, in my last role, you know, I was recognized as the employee of the month for my great customer service skills. That's fine. That's kind of a factual piece. If you said I was the best customer service representative in the whole company, that feels a little bit more braggy because that feels like you're sort of comparing to other people, if that makes sense. And the oversharing is, yeah, sometimes more of that personal details, or if you kind of keep restating the same information and people are like, okay, you've kind of wrapped up, I'm trying to talk to somebody else. You know, you can kind of sometimes tell if people have checked out of the conversation, they're not making eye contact with you, they're kind of looking around, things like that. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions anyone have? Well, thank you all so much for attending today. Like I said, you'll get an email from us in the next few days. So if you have any last questions, let me know. But otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Last question, ma'am. Can we also attend in events outside the campus for networking events? Is it
Yes.
okay for you?
So
Yeah.
for handshake purposes, so employers can host their own events. So we host events, so like this session, so more kind of educational developmental programs. And then we also sometimes host those kind of employer focused events like the career fair on the 25th. So we post events, but employers can also post events. So, you know, if Edward Jones is having a recruiting session at their headquarters, or, you know, Emerson is having a virtual session to learn more about their companies and upcoming opportunities they have, they can share those on Handshake. So we approve usually like a couple of sessions every day. Those requests will come through my office. So yes, you can absolutely attend those. A lot of them I would say are virtual. Some employers will share those just with Webster, and then some of them will recruit for multiple schools. So for instance, they can say they want this recruiting session posted to Webster and St. Louis University and Washington University and University of Missouri. So, you know, that's why sometimes if you're seeing a lot of students registered, it's probably not 500 students from Webster attending the Disney College internship program session. It's students also from other universities. So yes, you can absolutely find those there. Or otherwise, there are sometimes more community focused networking events. So if you're part of a professional organization, for instance, sometimes your school or college might bring a speaker to campus. If you're involved in community organizations, so maybe you're a member of a church or a temple or a synagogue, you know, maybe there's kind of networking you can do as you go through those. So yeah, there's different types of ways you can find those events. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all and hope you have a great rest of your day.